Oh, you thought you weren't going to see us this week, ladies and gentlemen. This Tuesday night, Cageside Live, brought to you by CageSidePress.com. I'm Eddie Law. That's Gabriel Gonzalez. It's getting a little chilly out here. Arizona standards, mind you. I'm not gonna even pretend like I know what you East Coasters feeling, but nice little winter weather. What's it like out there with you?
I mean, here's the thing. In California, if it dips below 70, we think it's time to get the sweater with the bottom layer and all that, fuzzy socks. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I'm allowed to speak to that. But yes, the weather officially went like, no, you can't just go outside in shorts and a tank anymore. It's officially time for pants and long sleeves.
Yeah, every single time, anytime I talk about like cold weather, anyone that knows it from Arizona, I always get someone tell me, "Shut the fuck up!" Like, "Shut up, come to Boston. Shut the hell up, come to Boston." I'm like, for one, no, I'm not coming to Boston with your angry ass, but I'm with you. I'm not gonna complain. All right. On this episode, ladies and gentlemen, McGregor and Loba friendship is over, I guess. UFC Orlando this weekend on a pretty, obviously a rare, not an Apex card. That's not a pay per view, but a pretty goddamn stacked card. 15 fights if I counted right on that entire thing. Nate Diaz is a free agent, but first, PFL World Championship 2022 from Madison Square Garden this last Friday. And we saw major upset, but we'll start off here talking about one guy that we were all really nervous about until his fight got replaced. Marlon Moraes takes the L against Shamar Moraes in a very heartbreaking way, if we can put it that way. And I know a lot of people kind of skip the card, but honestly, this fight was worth watching. Marlon looked like Marlon Moraes. He looked like magic until he didn't. And Shaman knocked him the hell out. It was really nasty. What do you think now for Marlon? Do you think like maybe he should have stayed retired? Maybe he was right the first time, or was this one of those like he got caught type of deals?
I mean, it reminded me a bit of like Aaron Pico, some of his losses,
Mm.
just like it's going well until it's just not in brutal fashion, unfortunately. And that's what it felt like for Marlon. I want to give him credit because I do believe he's putting in that work. I do believe he's training smart and all of that, Eddie, honestly. I mean, I hate to say it because I don't think he's the oldest guy. I don't know if it's just he just ran into this murderer's row in late there in the UFC run, and he's just really taken too much damage. But I don't know what else it could be. You feel like anything can happen in MMA, but the fact that it just continues to happen, that he keeps suffering the type of losses that he is just like I don't know what to say. It kind of feels like Chuck Liddell when it was just like, dude, you could tell he's working hard. He's still got the power and could do this, but if the chin can't take the shots, you just don't know what else to say. You just feel like it's just not good for him to still keep going out there. And that's really what everything I could come back to. I know Shaman's a veteran. I know he's not in the upswing like he was when he was in the UFC himself, but this is a big win. But I'll say it. It felt like one that, hey, this was kind of on paper, maybe the toss up that you wanted Marlon to get, and instead this still happens. So it kind of feels like I don't even want to say it, but yeah, I feel like he should reconsider this comeback.
I fully agree with that. I think again he looked really good, and then just got caught, and it almost looked like after the fight. I was just like, man, I'm glad. First of all, I'm glad it wasn't Shane Burgos. If you guys don't know, Shane, what was the injury? Knee injury? Do you remember?
I think they said the knee, yeah.
Shane was supposed to make his PFL debut against Moraes, and I think me, you, and everybody else was like, "No, how about we don't do that fight? People trying to get our magic kill. What the hell?" And so when he got replaced by Shaman, I was like, "All right, cool. Like Marlon can he'll be competitive in this fight, but he might even be able to win." And then to have it end like that, I think once he got fight ended and all that, he sat up and he just had his face in his hands, like he realized like shit had happened again. So that was a tough watch, man, for real. All right. Shout out to Chocolate Toast. What's up? Hey, happy belated birthday, Toast. I finally got to meet this guy at Jake Paul Anderson Silva. Dope dude. Him and his boy do a great job on their show there on YouTube.
Hey, happy belated, man.
Yes, sir. Tank, what's up? If you don't know about Tank will never drop that Marty's juicing things. And honestly, he might be one of the most consistent viewers we've ever had like come on this show or keep a words or anything. So I just keep it going there, Tank. He does. He has. Is Derek Lewis okay? No pun intended. He's actually gone social media silent since he didn't fight.
I feel like
So
he always does that for a bit, though. No,
he
and then
does.
randomly he just pops back up and like nothing happened.
Right. And he posts some video where like he's okay or she's okay or whatever, one of those like Instagram videos.
Right.
But I did reach out to his management to see, but I never got a word back. So who knows? I'm sure he's fine. Toe says, how many buys did the PFL did? It was better than I thought. Started off as a 19.99 purchase point, in my opinion, but it made the 49.99 by the end of the night. I don't know, dude. Like, here's what I think. Like, if it surprises everybody and does really well pay-per-view buys wise, we'll hear about it. We'll hear a number. If it doesn't, we won't. And that's kind of how you're gonna judge it off.
Chael Sonnen's really good at spilling the tea sometimes, but I'm not gonna lie. I feel like he's even admitted that like he'll keep the secret. 100K is very generous. Realistically, diehards of the diehards and everything else on the holiday, south of 50K, and I'm not even gonna elaborate on it.
Yeah, and they didn't even go on a Saturday. On a UFC less weekend, they stayed on Friday night, which to me didn't make any sense. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you're going to compete against college football, and there was some big games that weekend. And so, I don't know, it's kind of weird. The other fight I want to talk about, and I believe you watched this one as well, Aspen Ladd and Julia Budd. First, real quick, what'd you think of the fight?
I actually was impressed with Aspen. I didn't think she would be able to match up quite as well as she did with the physicality of Bud.
Same.
Now, that was a very competitive fight. I could see why it went to split decision, but I was just impressed with Aspen's ability to stay in her face and kind of, when Julia returned fire, to take it and make it the kind of fight that it was. I really thought that I felt like Julia was going to remind people why she was the second best featherweight in the world behind, Amanda and then obviously later Chris, or vice versa, sorry. And instead, Aspen, she got after it, and I thought she looked great considering everything. So very impressed.
I thought it was a very Aspen Ladd-ish performance, and so I wasn't surprised by it, but she did make weight. Tank, Jesus Christ. Tank's always bringing this shit. Yeah, she made weight, dude. I know that was the running joke for him. She's going to beat the scale first. But I thought it was very Aspen Ladd-ish performance. I think, she did what she normally does. I think Julia, to me, looked surprised like at how Aspen was fighting. Which is wild to me. But after the fact, in the post-fight, she said that she believes her resume is better than Kayla Harrison's or who's the other one that she named? Who else did she name on that?
Did she name Pacheco? I know what you mean. I missed I remember the graphic. I'm forgetting the name too.
Yeah, I think it was Pacheco. Do you agree with that? Do you believe her resume is better?
No. I'm gonna just say it like that. And look, not to say Aspen was great and a great breath of fresh air at 135. Mm-hmm. Let's say, what is this, about 2-3 years ago now?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. It's been the Amanda Nunes show at 35, to the point that I think she didn't even defend the bantamweight title in 2019, maybe 2020. Mm-hmm. And no one even brought it up. No one ever said, well, why wasn't the bantamweight title on the line? Go back and look. End of the year review. No one ever brought it up. Well, why wasn't why? There wasn't really competition. So at the time, having someone young prospect on a roll like she was, obviously made a statement. Now, what happened? Two things. Obviously, she started running into her problems with the scale. Secondly, Irene Aldana, Ketlin Vieira, Mr. Chesson, these girls suddenly start making their way up again. And now suddenly it's like she isn't, one, the only one who's really making noise, but then two, she's struggling as the other girls are coming up. Now, mind you, is she still a solid prospect? Absolutely. Do I expect her to have a very interesting PFL run? Absolutely. But to say that, I feel like she hasn't won her big fight yet either. And even, Friday notwithstanding, now it's like, okay, well, are you going to build on this? Because now you have the same problem that Kayla and Pacheco have had. You may be doing great and you're a solid fighter yourself. It's about getting people to believe the competition you're facing is as legit as what you would take on in Bellator and UFC.
That's spot on. Yeah, I'm with you on that too. It's like, and I went out, I went and looked at the resumes all together, and I'm like, at best, they're the same. Like at best, they're the same. But that's the problem with that. Like you said, right now, you got to convince people and everybody else that the competition you're facing is as high level as as you want credit for, I guess. So yeah, there you go on that. What was the other fight I want to talk about? Before we get to the main event, Rob Wilkinson, former UFC guy, UFC middleweight, and then who was the other cat? Lafnan, Olivier Aubin-Mercier,
Yeah.
and then
Oh, you mean Brendan Loughnane?
Brendan Loughnane, OAM, and Rob Wilkinson, 3 former UFC fighters, or Loughnane, not
An asterisk on Loughnane. I get
thank
what
you,
you're saying.
asterisk on Loughnane, but I couldn't help but think after each fight ended, I'm like, man, the UFC missed out on something here. But after we just talked about Esmeralda right now, talking about the level of competition she's facing, do you think the UFC missed out on somebody on these guys?
You know what? In the short term, yeah, of course. They're solid fighters who would have kept performing well in UFC. But I think that that's something that people sometimes forget about the way the UFC does business. Sometimes it's just about who can they build into another superstar. And I think the big strength of the UFC roster, because they have all that money and brand name power behind them, is that, look, if you say you have the number one person and you also have numbers 2 through 10, your number one, your champion looks very legit, even though maybe the second best person may be a Brendan Loughnane or Olivier. Not saying they are necessarily in this case. Obviously, those weight classes are very loaded, but you get my point. Is that if the UFC has so many of the top guys and girls already, they can afford to give away a very solid contender like a Loughnane or Olivier, like a Burgos, even if you don't think, oh, this guy would have definitely beaten the Kamarus and the Islams and Charles. But for sure, the UFC knows that they let some talent go and they make that business decision. Respectfully, they have the kind of flexibility, they can afford to do that in loaded weight classes like 55 and 170. But yeah, I think UFC is happy with their roster. You got to think they are. Brendan, Olivier should be very happy with their decisions to walk away from possibly pursuing that track to get the short-term opportunities that they now got in PFL.
No, and it was funny because the whole time I kept thinking, like, dude, these guys left the UFC fighting for peanuts, really, and now they're millionaires. Taxes.
I mean,
and all. But
put it this way: think how long it would have taken a guy like Brendan Loughnane to become, let's say a pay-per-view consistent guy, like number one contenders. I mean, look how long it took a guy like Colby, Charles. It's not his track to PFL and making that quick money has worked out really well for him. In terms of like Olivier, guys who are already there, I mean, it's kind of a good consolation. Look, sometimes it plays out the way you want to, other times it doesn't. To be in a position where you could still have that opportunity, that's where the PFL really shines, is being able to pull these guys who still have a lot to offer, who, maybe the UFC said, hey, we're good, we can move on and keep building with other people.
There you go. No, it's a good way to put it. Either way, super happy for all 3 guys. They all made bank this weekend, so it was great. And then of course, as we all know, the main event to a lot of people that know Kayla Harrison, that about Kayla Harrison, that know about her run, her formerly undefeated run. This was a huge shock, massive shock. And it was, to me, I was already like, the first round kind of made sense, whatever. Like, all right, Kayla's not. She tried to take her out, couldn't do it. Whatever. Pacheco clearly improved from the last fight. I had to watch the last 2 fights prior to the events to make sure I was refreshed on it. But when they as we were going through rounds 4 and 5, I thought, she's losing this fight. She's losing this fight, and it's not like, ooh, maybe. It's not like, ooh, she's slightly. No, she's losing this fight. In the 5th round, when it ended, I thought, unless the judges just, whatever, they just ignore what they just saw, like, Pacheco should win. All through that, even when they announced the decision, I was still shocked. I was like, holy crap, they actually did it. So What do you think now of Kayla Harrison? As you remember beforehand, doing the media days and all that, she's talking about like who has Cyborg beat. Oh, Gina Carano was 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago. Amanda Nunes, at least Amanda Nunes fought Ronda Rousey when she was hot. She wasn't; it was already over. But talking about the name, what do you think now? Because I mean, there's too much to unwrap. But first of all, on the fight itself, her losing, what do you think of the fight itself?
I mean, I give full credit to Pacheco. I think that fight, it wasn't pretty, but it was more about the tenacity that got the job done. Just every time Kayla goes for a takedown and she's just hammering away at her face while
Yeah.
Kayla's locked in on the single, Pacheco gets taken down and she just keeps bashing away. It isn't pretty. It wasn't the most beautiful display of striking, grappling. They reversed each other a bunch. No one really got a very dominant position. There were submission attempts from Pacheco that I think showed just her where she was at mentally in the fight to really want to grit this one out and really make something happen. I think that, Pacheco, once again, I think she just studied those fights and it came down to the little things. Those shots added up. Usually, hey, a few hammer fists before you get taken down doesn't steal around for you. She did enough damage, landed enough that they did. You get taken down, hammer fist from the bottom doesn't usually steal around for you. Added up, yes, they did. And I think that's what made the difference for Pacheco. I was very shocked. I think you probably were, just how much damage Kayla was willing to take before getting the takedown. To her credit, she did more often than not complete several of those takedowns, but
Right.
I was watching that and I'm like, girl, even if you get her down, you're going to need something dramatic. You've taken too many shots. And so the fact that that happened repeatedly, I was very surprised. I thought that at a certain point, they would have tried to do something else, maybe just not so much the single leg, try to get the body lock, similar to Charles Oliveira, and try to get Pacheco down that way because you're just taking too much every time you go in for that single and you just hold on to it for 30 seconds and eat punches. To talk about your other question, just with that, and this is kind of why Kayla became a star, right? She's not afraid to make noise and draw attention. That's the marketing, right? What happens with that? It happened with Connor, happened with Ronda. When you talk a big game, it doesn't matter how much people like seeing the dominance or the greatness. There's always a cut of the fan base that is ready to say, hey, you're not all that in a bag of chips, were you? And that's what it is. And I think that, look, that approach still got her paid. So would she do it again? Ask her. She'd probably tell you, heck yeah, easily.
And my first thought as soon as the fight was over was like, well, there goes the Cyborg fight. Ain't no one want to watch that now.
Not for pay-per-view, no.
Not for pay-per-view.
I think that here's the thing. I don't think. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Go ahead, whatever you want to talk. But I know we'll probably talk about the business after the X's and O's.
Yeah. So Chris Cyborg tweeted out something like they should just saved or PFL just saved $3 million with Kayla Harrison lost, or Pacheco just saved $3 million. Even Cyborg had to laugh. She was just kind of like, well, that's what's gonna happen because we're not getting paid. But I mean, it's a huge missed opportunity now. That would have been a pay-per-view fight. But real quick before we get into the business side of it, a couple questions here from Tank. Did Jeremy Stevens the Little Heathen fight? He did. He got choked out. Or he tapped to the rear naked choke. Solid fight. And then John Jones Francis. That's all we need to talk about for the next 4 months. They need to make that fight first. Now, actually, we'll talk about that here in a second because Francis had actually put out videos talking about like y'all need to go watch this shit because this man has taken a hold of his own narrative. But we'll talk about it here in a second. But first, like you said, the business side. Pay-per-view, $50 with no time to build it up. Like literally weeks. And not many. It was like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We found out it was pay-per-view, something like that. Some short.
It's like a month. Give them generously. They gave us a month to know it's going to be a pay-per-view.
It even pissed off Kayla Harrison. She was like, I'm a little annoyed, but you could tell she was really irritated that first of all, it was Pacheco they gave her for a pay-per-view, and then no time to build it up or sell it. So what did you think of the decision to make this a pay-per-view? The very first one the PFL had.
On the timing alone, that was like pushing the Titanic out toward the iceberg. It just Black Friday. Also, you think about it, in the last month, MMA fans specifically have had 280 and 281. So the most stacked card of the year, and then arguably the most dominant and exciting Superstar, not Asanya, both pay-per-views. And then to add on to it, here in America, Black Friday, the one day where people spend their money they've been saving to shop
Mhm.
for luxuries and other things, maybe essential, most likely not, but you get my point. That alone was like, okay, this is already not a good idea. Then just the timing of it, I just am shocked. The only thing I can think of is that PFL felt like they needed to do something. They've it's no secret they don't sell out huge venues for these events. I believe last season for the most part was behind closed doors essentially. I wouldn't be surprised if at a certain point the investors with big pockets are saying, hey, like, there must be a change to the status quo. We can't just keep funding all of these really well produced events,
Mhm.
um the time in between fights notwithstanding, and just not making the return. So I can only imagine that was why they still went ahead and said Black Friday doesn't matter, 1 month notice, we're doing this as the pay-per-view. That's the only thing I can imagine.
I thought, like, man, huge missed opportunity. I thought for sure because it was on. And whenever once I realized it was Black Friday, I'm like, all right, cool. Here's what's gonna happen. I made this wishful thinking. I was like, cool. They're gonna be like, hey guys, Black Friday, we're gonna give you a discount code. It's now gonna be $30. Still a lot, but $30. I've been like, dude, that'd been the move. You'd have sold gangbusters on that. Even $20, even more. But they didn't. They kept it at $50, and the whole, like, I had the same thought as you did. Like, I mean, my wife went out and shopped Black Friday stuff and all that, and I prefer, Cyber Monday. I don't like to go out shopping, but
Same,
yeah,
same.
yeah. I was like, you can bring it to me, cool, I'm gonna do that. But yeah, but I thought, man, no one's gonna have money for this. Like, yeah, I always talk about it, especially on Keyboard Warriors. I'm like, I usually rate a pay-per-view card, whether it's UFC or anybody else. It's either must buy, regardless if it's by yourself or with other people. Two, my second, it's 3 tiers. The second tier is call your boys over and everyone pitch in, or 3, stream it allegedly. Don't bother. Like, there's no reason to pay for this. And so this is, for me, this one was number 3. And you know, for me, it was mostly like the lack of buildup. Like, all right, you're not making me care that she's fighting Pacheco for the 3rd time. Like, they couldn't, obviously, no one's gonna foresee that Pacheco's gonna pull off the huge upset. Otherwise, everyone would have bought it. But regardless of that, it was just weird, man. Jesus, Tank.
I mean,
Eagle FC is number 1, brother.
they need to come back to America.
They need to
Like,
come back. Yeah.
I think since Habib got busy, it's all like, no, we're keeping it in Kazakhstan and everything. He hasn't been back to Florida, and I think there's not even anything still scheduled on the books until 2023, which I
Right.
find surprising because it felt like they were hitting their stride.
Yeah.
Going back to that, I mean, yeah, like, to go back to the fight, I felt like Pacheco's fought the same kind of girls as Kayla.
Mhm.
So if you're saying, well, Pacheco's improved, it's like they kind of improved in parallel paths, right? They've been
Right.
fighting the same girls. Kayla keeps looking dominant. Pacheco looks dominant. There was nothing new we were really seeing, right? You kind of felt like, well, Kayla has also gotten better fighting the same level. Obviously, we've now learned a lot more about how Larissa was going to approach the fight, and here we are. But then going back to the pay-per-view, I want to touch on it. I feel like Kayla's loss compounded with the fan reaction since they announced the pay-per-view probably just was the nail in the coffin on even making Kayla Cyborg a pay-per-view.
Oh yeah.
Because I think that there's no way you could see these numbers and be like, hey, we can double down again and it'll be a success. I just don't see how. And could you still make Kayla Cyborg? Sure. Would it still do business? Sure, but now you got to think, is it worth it to PFL to open the checkbook to pull Cyborg, most
Right.
likely 2 fights, rematch clause if Kayla loses, or cut a check to Bellator? You know, is it still worth it? Probably not.
And I'm with you on that. I don't think at this point it's gonna be hard to justify paying Cyborg to do that. So I guess we'll come we'll see what happens, man. But before we move on the subject, do you think the PFL would at some point try this pay-per-view thing again?
Okay, I think that if they open the checkbook and get Jake Paul's MMA debut, you could do it.
Damn. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, hey, I brought this up on MMA Daily, available on
Yeah.
Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But no, I think I'm not gonna lie. Ariel Helwani was talking, and he's like, "I heard there's something that could blow everything out of the water," and I'm like, "They got Jake Paul, didn't they? They got him to sign
That'd
the
be
dotted
wild.
line. You knew it wasn't gonna be UFC after everything with Dana. It's gonna be PFL." And then I was like, "Freaking Anderson Silva had to take him the distance, of course."
Right, right. Anyway, and now he's talking Tommy Fury. He's talking
Paddy Pimblett apparently today now.
Patty Pim. Jesus, who else? The one more guy. Oh, the one everyone hates. Who's the guy that everybody?
Phil
Huh?
Dennis.
No, no, no. Dylan Dennis is fighting some guy named KSI. Who
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate. Thank you. Everyone hates that dude, and he makes me laugh because I'm just like, yeah, you don't believe shit you're saying.
I'm
Stop.
embarrassed how many Gen Z people in my life have had to teach me about Andrew Tate, man. I didn't even go down the rabbit hole. It's like, what kind of stuff did he say? And they're all like, like, we'll talk about it later. And it's like, that bad, huh?
Nah, yeah. My kids told me about him, and I was like, "How do you motherfuckers know about this guy?" And they're like, "Oh, yo, you look him up. Look, he says wild shit." And I'm like, "Okay." So I looked him up, and I'm like, "Oh, he don't believe shit he's saying. He's making money off this. Yeah, out of your mind. You think I believe you, Andrew Tate? I don't believe you believe anything you're saying." Anyway, but regardless, I don't really care who Jake Paul fights at that point. But if he fights MMA, damn sure I'll be watching. I'll be really curious. If he pulls that off.
There's pay-per-view. Hey, Jake Paul. Hey, Jake Paul, Dylan Dennis, Kayla Cyborg co-main event. Let's do it.
Make that a pay-per-view. See what happens.
There we go. PFL. I saved the day. Let's see. My check is in the mail, I hope.
Write him a check. Some percentage on that. All right. Francis Ngannou releases a vlog detailing injury. I know Tank was asking about Francis and Jones. First of all, that's the target for I think 284.
March.
Which is March, right? Which is the UFC poking at Francis, putting pressure on him. So like, hey, first you gotta sign this contract if you want this fight. Second, you gotta be back by March, or we're probably gonna strip you or some shit. So Francis, I don't know if you watched all the episodes. I couldn't stop watching him. Like once I found him, I was like, oh crap! Like, all right, yeah. And I started watching him. This man tore, I think it was an MCL. I think he tore something, and he went to get second opinions and all that. They told him like, I wouldn't fight if I was you. We don't want you to fight. And he was like, yeah, I'm gonna fight anyway. Then he went ahead and beat Cyril Gahn at his own game. So that was wild to see. But my biggest takeaway in that whole thing was this is Francis Ngannou taking the narrative back from the UFC, because the UFC is going to try and make him look like he's, not a team player, all the other bull stuff, whatever he says, he's not as good as he says he is, whatever. And now Francis is like, I fought with a blown knee. You're telling me I'm not worth the how much of $1 million I want or whatever on my contract. What do you take from Francis finally saying, screw it, I'm going to put my own story out?
I mean, he's just, I respect so much of the approach he's taken. He knows how much money is on the table. He's letting people know, guys, like, I know you want those fights. I want those fights, but like, you guys got to understand, I'm trying to get paid too. And he's explaining it. And like you said about the narrative, he hit it well competitively. He made sure Cyril Gahn was expecting a striker. And then, of course, he turns out the performance he did on a bad knee. I just got so much respect for that. I think he said all the right things, even in regards to the negotiations. He said, it's like, look, like they have a business. I'm my own business. We're trying to do business together still. I know Dana has said some comments in the past about making things happen with Francis and, Ngannou, and we've talked about this, I think, on this very show. Mm-hmm. He's not going to leave Tyson Fury money on the table if it's a possibility in 2023. He shouldn't. He knows that the fight with John Jones is a big fight, and he probably understands his drawing power. Not for nothing, he is the only African champion left. Yes, if they go to Africa, it's still going to be stacked, but you watch that post-fight press conference, for a while there, it turned into the, UFC Africa campaign from Dana White and how much he wanted to go there. And I was like, yes, you could still put Kamaru and Izzy on it, but Ngannou's now the only African champion. He is the one to carry that torch when they get there. So to me, I feel like Ngannou understands all of that, and he's just trying to let people know. And, I think all of this is helping his cause. But once again, what I appreciate most, he's saying all the right things. He's not trying to go to war with UFC. He's saying, man, let's do everything. Let's make it happen. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, there was not one malicious word said about the UFC in any of the episodes that I watched, and I was just like, this guy's being legit. Like he's being honest. Like you've seen other people talk F the UFC, other stuff, and F Dana White. I mean, Tito Ortiz, Dana White's my bitch and all stuff, and the stuff between Nate saying the UFC that you don't want to pay, and this is obviously older stuff, but Ngannou hasn't taken that approach at all, and it's honestly to me it's refreshing because it's on. It seems honest to me, so it's we'll see what happens
I
with
mean,
that guy.
I think he knows. Like, look, UFC does what UFC does. They got to
Mhm.
keep the machine, keep the ball rolling. Obviously, the fighters, you kind of see it. Look at how many guys injured. You only have a small window to make that real life changing money, and you got more guys kind of putting their foot in the ground to say, "No, this is my time to give it my best attempt to make that money when I do." And I get it. As fans, sometimes it's kind of frustrating because it feels like, well, not when they don't meet eye to eye, we get not the fights that we don't get the fights we want, and it feels like we risk it and people lose, and then that big fight we were all excited about, it doesn't happen. I get it, but I also understand from the fighters in the business side of things. Dana White has X amount of pay-per-views he's got to make. Fighter Y has to do what he's got to do to make money. Sometimes that means sitting out to try to negotiate, and here we are.
Exactly. No, and so you kind of hope that. I mean, the hope as a fan, like, you just want to see Francis in there fighting, and if it's John Jones, even better.
I
But
mean, Eric Nixick, they've been teasing March for a while. Even,
for a while,
the Extreme Couture, specifically Ngannou's coach at Extreme Couture, Eric Nixick, hey, are you guys busy in March? They know, everyone knows that if it all continues the way it's going, Ngannou should be healthy for that one. If there's any kind of hiccup, it's John Jones, 4th of July or bust. After that, yeah, let's start talking about different titles, interims, and all that, because at that point, really, even from a UFC standpoint, it's like, okay, we really do got to move on.
keep John Jones the hell out of Vegas, please. Don't do that again. That dude's just not for Vegas.
Can I ask you one?
Yeah,
Jones and Ngannou, and let's say, man, you know what? I want to think of a good co-main event. Oh, you know what? Okay, Kamaru, no, Adesanya Pereira, the rematch.
is it
Ngannou
coming?
Jones.
Mm,
Is that Allegiant Stadium worth? Not
yeah,
T-Mobile. Do the stadium. Like, if you could lead it with those two, is that enough to get Dana to say, no, we're going to the big house?
hell yeah. I would do that if I was him. What do you think the holdup is on doing stadium shows?
I honestly think that just the way the UFC runs it, I feel like it's very hard for them to command the ticket price. Enough
Yeah,
of them. Like, I think you don't do a stadium show unless you could really sell that out. And I think that that's just the feeling. It costs a lot of money, and I think that that's just really what it comes down to, is that UFC knows they could sell out a T-Mobile very easily. A stadium that twice the capacity at the kind of ticket prices that they need. I think that the
mhm,
UFC just is like, look, with anything could happen. We just don't want to risk committing to a stadium.
mm,
Something happens, and then like, look at the stadiums. They never say, or hypothetically, like Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. What
right.
is it? Chiefs Bucks.
Bucks, yeah.
UFC fans, if something happens to the main event and the stars, they don't just come for the UFC. What happens? Refunds, and
The
suddenly
refund.
things happen. Suddenly UFC is like, man, we could be about to lose money going to Allegiant. I think that's the one thing that honestly keeps them from it. I can't imagine anything else.
Shoot, yeah, that makes sense to me, man. We've been talking about stadium shows forever. I think the last one I remember, I think was a GSP card in Canada.
Yeah.
I think, and I only remember that because they had little white fold out chairs for people sitting in front. I was like, okay, all right, Canada, do you? But anyway,
I would love it. It would be so epic, right? It would feel
it'd be
so epic.
amazing.
Just like, dude, the big fight got the stadium.
Yeah.
It was just like WWE does it,
Mhm.
Tyson Fury does it. You would love it.
Exactly. But you're right. Injury, stuff like that, you never know with this type of game. So And we'll see if we ever get a stadium show in the Legion, because that'd be great. But that would be a perfect main and co-main right there, because people would love to see those fights. In fact, people are asking for those fights already. So
I'm just trying to think who is like a solid, like, you know what, you don't just have one big star, but two UFC superstars specifically to take this one.
It'd be wild. You could never get him to do it because his ego's ridiculous. But if you can get those two and maybe like Conor McGregor against like Michael Chandler as the third fight on there, like, you kidding me? Come on, like that would sell out immediately. I think Ireland would fill up that stadium real quick.
What about, okay, I'll give you this one: Jones and Ngannou, and then Connor Tony co-main.
Connor Tony
I
Ferguson?
feel like Tony Ferguson. I feel like Connor's more likely to take the Tony fight than the Chandler fight.
As a comeback, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, he don't want that Chandler fight off the bat. He'll say he does, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that dude's crazy. All right, we'll talk about McGregor here in a second, actually. But actually, let's talk about him now. The besties break up. McGregor and Lobov are no longer boys. Lobov has basically sued him for, I think it was 5% of whatever Popper 12 came sold for.
That's
claiming
$600 million. Yeah,
a lot of money. Yeah, so we're talking millions, and in the balance here on a lawsuit. And McGregor has not. We know McGregor. He don't keep his mouth quiet at all. Lawyers will tell him to shut up, and he won't do it. He's been putting stuff out, calling Lobov a blouse and a rat and a bunch of other stuff, and then comes out today saying he wants to fight Lobov at SBG wherever. And this was in the gym, whatever, because now he's allegedly, according to Connor, he's suing Connor and his dad for defamation, right? Because those two never shut up. So they're going and going. So it's getting messy as hell. It's getting nuts, and it's not gonna lie, it's making me start rooting for Artem Lobov a little bit. Like, all right, dude, humble yourself there a little bit, Connor. But when you first heard of the lawsuit and all that, and the allegations, do you think it's like a legit, like Artem Lobov might have a case here, or is he just going for a money grab since he hasn't fought forever?
I think that if he had some skin in the game, making proper 12, and you don't get a cut of $600 million,
I'd be upset.
I think that's what happened. I think that, you know what? No, I think they tried to kick me some pennies when they all started eating more steak and lobster, and he just wasn't okay with it. And I think that, maybe there's a bit of that, betrayal aspect to it. Like, no, Connor, if there's anyone who got stuff on Connor, probably Artem, right? So I think that he feels a bit of that. No, I'm not just gonna take my quarter and be happy. I'm putting my line in the sand too. So I think that's what happened. But it's so sad. I mean, one day you're willing to fly in your private jet and throw a dolly at somebody for your friend, and next thing you know, he's suing you. It's enough to make Conor McGregor just stay at home when he sees his other buddy Dylan Dennis getting into fights every week.
Dude, what the hell is up with Dennis, man? I laughed so hard. First of all, when Nate slapped his coach, I always Nate would have slapped him, but Nate slapped his coach, and then one of his teammates, coaches, whatever, and then he gets smacked by a boxer. Who was the guy that smacked him? Remember?
Oh my gosh, I forgot. It wasn't it. It was one of the guys at one of those misfit boxings, right?
Yeah.
Was it Deji? Yeah. Was it KSI's little bro?
No, this guy was tiny.
I'd have to double check that. No, yeah. I'm with you. I mean, what I find funny, remember when it's like, oh well, Habib and them were intimidating Lobov, so it instigated the whole dolly thing. Dylan is his guy, right? How many dudes have punked Dylan Dennis, and Connor's like, nah, the private jet stays in the hangar. Okay. It's like, I find that aspect of the story a little entertaining, but yeah, I mean, I gotta say this. Quick note: is Misfits Boxing cutting Bellator the check for Dennis?
Ooh,
I feel like Scott Coker's like this is so ridiculous. Like this young man is on my books and will not. He'll do everything. He'll fight everybody except in my cage. What the heck? So you got to imagine Scott Coker was like, either we get the check or you will receive the summons from the lawyer. So
I wonder if it's that, or possibly on the complete opposite end, Coker's like, screw it, get this guy, do me a favor, get rid of this mother, because if Dennis gets knocked out in boxing, like, who's gonna give a shit if Dennis fights? Well, people already don't care.
remember that was his thing about letting the Bellator guys fight Jake Paul was like, where's our check?
True.
Where's he making Bellator money? Why does he not come back? You know what I mean? Like, why doesn't Jake Paul come over here and then go box and do all this whatever? But
Mm.
I think that that's what's happening is that somebody somewhere has to cut it. So people always got to get their check. People always got to get their cut.
Exactly. So I'm more likely than anything, they'll end up settling, and Artem will get a couple million to go just disappear somewhere. But
I'm a little disappointed Lovov didn't show up to the gym. I think that would have been the most watched IG live ever.
oh, that'd be
Right?
that'd be crazy. And then some. First of all, if Artem's in shape or not?
Oh no, that I don't. Hey, he
Okay.
ain't Connor shape. I know that.
No, yeah, no one's Connor shaped. Jesus, we'll talk about that here in a second too. Connor wants Diego. Remember? I don't know. Stop it.
Why you
Leave
guys
Diego
always want to
alone.
see a dead body?
Why?
In the comments, you guys always want to see some.
Apparently, if Connor wants Diego, that's some bull. Like, I was already like not caring to watch Diego box Dan Hardy, and they were gonna box, and some broadcaster bought the card and said, "Nah, we don't need the undercard at all," and literally cut that fight. But which is Dan Hardy. I think Dan Hardy's the one that put that out there. But like, I didn't even want to see that. You think I want to see Connor bounce Diego's head off the canvas and no, leave that man alone. Like whatever little brain cells he's got left that Fabia didn't steal from him, like leave it alone. Fuck. And then he goes, Connor was coming to fight Habib before everything crumbled the dolly. Go back and look at Connor. He was weighing light.
I mean, it's straight up. Yeah, that was always all stage. He was always going to be brought in the cage and all that. I'm just, maybe I didn't show my sarcasm enough. Yes, we all knew Connor was always going to be there anyway in Brooklyn. It's just we got a much better story than anyone thought.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
and Loki. I think he thought those bus windows. I think he thought they were going to be a lot tougher, so he threw it. You ask him honestly. You ask him. NDAs and all that. He'd tell you. In that Irish accent, like honestly, thought the windows were going to be stronger.
Yeah, he probably threw the die. He's like, oh shit. He's like, hey man, I thought they were plexiglass. What the hell? Oh man. Connor texted that, not me. Well, there you go. If Connor wants to fight Diego,
You knew it.
I feel like MMA fans will stand up and be like, nah, dude, fight someone that can fight back. Speaking of Connor has been criticized quite a bit. Anthony Smith, a bunch of other people, for looking like he's on the Liver King. I don't know if you guys heard the Liver King stuff today, but it looking like he's on the Liver King like diet, straight up liver and raw meat and all the roids. Dude looks jacked as hell. Everyone's been talking about it for a while. Like that doesn't look natural at all. But then Anthony Smith being an analyst and a UFC fighter, came out speaking about it, saying the same thing. Weidman's been out for same injury. He's still alive. He's still not healthy. And so turns out USADA and the UFC are kind of pointing fingers at each other on who's to I guess blame for the lack of oversight on Connor. And USADA is saying that it's the UFC. It's the UFC's call not only to not test him outside of competition when he clearly looks like he's juicing, but also when Connor said he's going to test twice and then take a fight, apparently that's also the UFC's call, according to USADA. You can see all this at CagesidePress.com. It's to me, it's a wild story, but to me, it speaks more of the negligence on USADA's part than anybody. But if it's true that the UFC said don't touch him, like what can you do? What do you think of that?
So any job ever, I mean, I'm speaking to all of you guys watching. You tell me one job you had or know of where someone wasn't getting special treatment because they were X, Y, or Z.
Oh, yeah.
You're telling me in this big company with this many dollars that there isn't ever anything going on? And mind you, look, I get it. I don't like it either because I feel like we invest because it's supposed to be fair in the competition, right? I get that. But, I think that, look, Conor McGregor brings in millions of dollars. So if things get expedited, that's the kind of thing that you get when you bring X amount of dollars to a company like Conor does for the UFC. Mm-hmm. I understand some fighters being salty about it completely. But I also think that the Conor rule, the rules for Conor aren't the same that apply to everyone else in the company. So I think that's just how I felt about it. I think USADA was trying to. I think they were facing a lot of criticism after it came out that Connor was the only guy on their chart that isn't tested, and it just said like, "Hey, look, I know that UFC is their most high-profile like client and all that, but even Dana White said like, we don't own USADA."
Right.
At the same time, while UFC is probably pays for a lot of business for USADA to keep the lights on, they are not their only person. So I think this was a way of like, hey, that's a UFC call, whether or not they follow this policy, but we are doing this, and this is why X, Y, or Z would or would not happen. So I think that's just pretty much it. It's more for out of respect to their other clients that would use
Gotcha.
USADA. Like, hey, well, what's going on? What's with the Connor thing? It's like, that's a UFC thing. We're doing our part. They say test them, we test them.
That makes way more sense than anything I could have thought of. So that's a good point. And then he replied to Anthony Smith losing his shit on Twitter. He just lost it and saying a bunch of stuff, whatever, and calling him, the usual rat and all this other stuff. Anthony Smith responded on Bisping's podcast, I Believe You Me, and he says, quote, "He made my whole point by having this freak out. He said he had to do it because he wasn't healing correctly, and the break was so bad that the percentages were really low. I'm not even questioning the reason. I get it. If there's something out there that can help me heal that I can do legally, I totally would, because I will heal a lot faster. But it's not even his reasoning that I'm questioning. What bugs me is guys like Anderson Silva and guys like Chris Weidman and myself. I've had a lot of bad injuries, and we didn't have the ability to step out of the USADA pool, get yourself healed, and then come back with no repercussions. That's my issue. Now, to be fair, I'm pretty sure Anderson didn't break his leg, or didn't break his leg. Well, USADA was in place. I think Weidman definitely was. So, but I gotta say, I get Anthony Smith's reasoning. That's not fair. It really isn't fair. So,
no, I agree with you on that. Of course, Anthony Smith has to feel that way, but then once again, we talked about it with the Dolly thing, right?
yeah.
If a prelim fighter had done that to a UFC pay-per-view bus, you tell me what you think would have happened. But because it is, because it is Connor, there we go.
A lot of leeway for them, man. Tank says, I bet Connor brought up the intruder that Anthony couldn't handle. I don't even know, but that's a running joke.
That is just vicious.
That dude, look, man, that guy was, I don't know if you ever gotten in a fight with anybody like it's on PCP or anything, but they don't know pain, and their muscles they go crazy. So
I feel like, Eddie, you need to tell that story on the next episode, man.
We might have to do that. Yeah, we'll have to do that. All right. I was at one point a bouncer at a bar in Tucson, Arizona. I'll start it there, and then I'll leave it for the next show.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's on.
All right. Nate Diaz is officially a free agent, former Conor McGregor opponent. Officially free agent as of today, according to his management. He's removed from the roster, yada, yada, all that other stuff. What is next for Nate? I mean, he's already set up like a handful of things at this point. I was at Jake Paul Anderson Silva. I was literally in the back by chance. I had been up at where they sit the media or the extra media, which, by the way, I believe was way better season where the actual, Cageside media was, because they were way in the back and we were up seeing everything. But I went down to the media room to check on my camera, make sure, because apparently, in the boxing world, no one respects anybody's stuff. So I went down to make sure my camera hadn't been moved. It hadn't. I was glad. But I literally came out and I just looked to the left and I saw a gang of people there, like a bunch of people. And then I heard like a slap and F you and middle fingers. And my phone immediately came out. I started filming that shit immediately. Right. And I recognized Nate. Look, there's not many slaps that I will recognize off just seeing the movement. All right. And the sound and the middle finger. But the second I saw all three of those things, I was like, that's Nate Diaz. And I said it loud as shit. And everyone was like, what? And I started filming everything. And shout out to Inside Fighting. One of my boy Dream over there got it on video. And he got a way better angle because he's, they hang out with those guys from Nate Diaz's team. But you guys all saw the footage. Like, it's a setup for Jake Paul. The Jake Paul Nate Diaz fight. Honestly, Jake Paul's got all the options. But to me, it seems like Nate was like wanting to make sure the groundwork was set for that fight. Then we get the Danis stuff. Who else is Nate gonna go slap outside of the cage or outside of the ring to set up a fight for? So what do you think is next for this guy? Because he's got all the options too.
Nate or Jake?
Nate.
Nate, you know what? So I saw that it sounds like because I saw the tweet from Howani also that the manager said, "Look, we are also aware that the UFC could offer up
Sure.
Connor's return for big money. Also, that's not pennies. You know, the UFC would
Ooh.
push that one a lot, and suddenly we're all best friends again, right?
Oh yeah.
Maybe not Connor and Artem, but you get my point.
Right.
Um, I think that Nate is going to see what's the better offer and what's going to happen sooner. If he wants to stay active, if the point is to get paid while he's still at this stage of his athletic prime, he
Sure.
may just be like, okay, well, when are we doing Connor? Is it summer? Is it winter? What are, like, because if so, now it's like, okay, Jake Paul, how much money, when, where? Let's have this conversation.
Mhm.
Jake, it looks like he moved on from Tommy Fury. I'm not gonna lie, I find that I felt like they were just perfect for each other, Jake and Tommy. And
Mhm.
you know, Jake has done his part. He has moved past Tommy, even though I think that he would actually be tested perfectly against
Mhm.
Fury. Now whoever Jake is going after, it's like, okay, now it's like, when would we do the Nate Diaz fight? Because I
Mhm.
think that if it does happen that first quarter 2023, Nate is probably going to jump on that because it's
Sure.
big money, sells easy. Imagine Jake, Nate, two fan bases that love to, get vocal. It would be bananas. It'd be beautiful for us who make money on this. Um, and then if it's pushed back anymore, Jake wants to do something else. Obviously, the UFC conversation is going to come back into play, if for nothing else, because Nate knows he's a pay-per-view guy now.
Oh
He's
yeah.
not free TV anymore. Hasn't been free TV since Connor tapped on 2 weeks' notice in that fight.
Yeah.
It would do big money, so he knows that most likely, unless a Bellator PFL, I'm talking about like they have to cut some big name people
Oh, big time.
probably to pay Nate what he feels he could command on the table.
That we look. I'd be interested in seeing that. So I had the same thought about if this fight is early 23, first quarter, like you said, you do Jake Paul, Nate Diaz. Um, Jake's just like you said, he's stringing Tommy along. He's just talking, but he's just stringing him along. The Andrew Tate stuff, I don't think is real. I never did.
No.
And so I
I
think
think
that
those are two guys who just know, hey, you talk about me, I talk about you, it'll make us money.
exactly. And so the Diaz fight is the one that makes the most sense to me. Now, the other thought I had on that was, okay, you get Nate and Jake Paul. Why do I have a feeling that Nate's gonna be like, you got to give my brother a fight too? I'm saying, and who would
Why
it
you
be?
do this to me, Eddie?
I'm just telling you. I feel like Nate would do that shit. Nate would be like, you got to give my brother a fight too, man. Like,
Who
I
does Nick fight?
like, Jake's
Oh,
brother,
I know
Jake's
who you were
brother.
talking about. Anthony Taylor, the
Oh, that's the
Bellator
guy I
guy who
slapped though.
boxed. Yes, that's who you're talking about.
Gotcha.
Anthony Taylor versus Nick and Jake versus Nate.
Okay.
They're boys. Taylor, I mean, I know the dude fought featherweight at Bellator for the Tommy Fury fight. He was over 180. You
Oh
got to
yeah.
think,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So there you go. I did it again. Imagine,
Yeah,
sell it.
I thought they'd be like Logan's his brother, Logan Paul and Nick, and I would love that because Nick would slap the taste out of that dude's face. But let's be honest, Logan can't fight. That's what it is. I mean, Mayweather knocked him out twice and had to carry him physically.
Don't trash Logan. I'll tell you right now. Logan is my favorite of the Paul brothers.
Oh, same.
I,
I messed around and
let everybody
accidentally
know.
watched. Huh.
Go for it, man.
I accidentally watched Impulsive like a couple weeks ago, and I thought I was gonna be irritated by him. I was entertained. I'm like, okay, cool.
He is a very cool dude in person. I
Oh yeah.
always let people know. People always ask, like, I think that's what the number one people I'm asked about is like, like Gen Z people ask me, what was Logan Paul like? And I'm like, honestly, nice dude. Like,
Yeah.
I don't trash Logan Paul. I know people like to. I know it's very low hanging fruit. Y'all leave that man alone. Let him make money getting beat up by Roman Reigns.
I give him credit. I actually watched that, and I
That
believe he
was
blew
so
his knee out.
fun.
And well, he jumped from like fucking forever. I'm just like, oh, this guy's about to fuck himself up, and then boom, and I was like, oh, he broke something for sure. So I gotta give him credit for doing that. I know I got him paid and everything, but those are all things that we all, when we were kids, we all wish we could get done. So good for those guys. Yeah. So, oh man, oh dude, my kids asked me about meeting about meeting Jake Paul because I got to talk to him. Obviously, we got to talk to him up close and all that, and they were like, "Oh, is he a real asshole?" I'm like, actually, he's pretty nice. Jake's a nice guy for the most part. I think all the other stuff is persona, but he looks scared shitless about getting in there with Anderson. So, I gotta give him credit, man. All right, and then UFC Orlando this weekend.
Real quick, I was saving Yuri's stuff and all that for next week. I'm assuming.
No, do it now. I completely spaced on Yuri. Jesus.
I mean, obviously, we're gonna get into X's and O's next week, but yeah, like, I feel like we
very
can't
quickly
really...
on Yuri. Go ahead.
I mean, just dude, I wish the best for him in that. Even if he doesn't get back to the summit after, I mean, when Dana White says this is the worst shoulder injury that UFC doctors have ever seen, I'm like, bruh, like this man was about to be making money. I think he's still under 30. I hope that he still has big paydays when he comes back. If that's in a year and a half or so, I hope that for him. That's what I'm most like disappointed about. Then Glover, I just
dude,
I understand. I think the UFC made the right call. There are no other titles. You need to keep a title on 280. What are we on? 282.
282.
And then for Glover, dude, you're over 40. You just lost the title. There's not this many, through the breach journeys left for you at this stage of your career.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, you want to put yourself in the best position to win them. I don't blame him for not taking the Ankalaev fight on 2 weeks' notice. I commend him for saying, hey, can we do Rio and this and that? I hope he comes back into the conversation quickly because I feel like, hey, he was right there. But instead, like, I get his point of view. I get UFC, why they made their call.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think my biggest thing is for Yuri, a good recovery because that dude was about to be making money. I hope he still gets to when he gets back.
Same. I had the same thought on that because it's like, first of all, when he dropped the belt, see, he immediately was like, "Yeah, I'm withdrawing this. I don't want to hold I don't want to hold anybody up and everything." I was like, "That nobody does that. Everyone just hangs on to it, and he would do an interim belt." And I thought I honestly think he should have done that, but I got to give him a lot of credit for not holding up the division. But it reminds me when Eddie Alvarez signed that fight with Conor McGregor and said, and everyone asked him, "Did you negotiate?" He goes, "No," and I'm sitting there going like, "Oh, dude, that was stupid." Like, it reminded me of that. And I'm hoping that he betting on himself is the right move. He comes back and gets a title shot and gets his belt back. But on Glover, I got disagreement. I thought that Jan Glover 2 was the move. No disrespect to Ankalaev. Magomed Ankalaev is a badass and he will get a title. He will. I mean, he's fighting for title now, but he would have gotten a title shot pretty soon anyway. But I want to see Glover Jan 2. I think that first fight left enough on the table to where you want to see. I want to see a second one. But UFC gonna UFC.
For free, yes, but also remember like last year when that happened to Jake Paul. Like he was gonna fight Tommy Fury.
Right.
Tommy was withdrew. Short notice, they'd have to resell Woodley Paul 2 and didn't go well. I think that's what UFC saw and was like, we just can't sell something people already saw on short notice before the holidays. I mean, look, it's got to be fair. UFC is trying to sell this during December too. Right. I think that I'm not saying that it's still going to do gangbusters, but I also understand why you feel like, hey, lesser two evils to sell on short notice is a brand new fight in Glover Magomed, not Glover Jan, and instead we still get our fresh fight that we could sell. And probably smoothest to negotiate because they were already prepping for each other.
That's a good point. It was funny because apparently Jan was on a flight to, I think, the States. And he didn't have any internet. And when he landed, his manager calls him like, "Yeah, you're fighting for a title, bro. All right, 5 rounds now. See you soon." Like, fuck. So that's what he wanted. He wanted a title shot. So
that's the difference between me and him. My phone doesn't blow up enough for me to want no Wi-Fi. Like, I don't know how long the flight is from Poland, but if I had the option, you give me everything. I want to stream my entire way through that.
Dude, I go to Chicago way too much, but from here to Chicago it's like 3.5 hours. Please believe I'm paying Southwest $8 for that Wi-Fi. I don't give a fuck. All right, and I know there's free entertainment and all that on the little app. I don't give a shit. I'm on the internet. So there you go. All right, and we'll definitely break down the whole Yuri thing in next week again, just because 282 is next week or the week after.
Yep, next week.
Next week. That's right. You will be there. That's right. All right. UFC Orlando, ladies and gentlemen, this weekend. It's a pretty big card for being a fight night. Like 15 fights on there. Let's see what time, and it's a late start for everybody. So this is the time on this screen right here is MST, so it's Arizona time. It's actually 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern time, but it's later for me now because Arizona don't want to change shit. So yeah, some of the fights on here that are actually pretty good. Yasmin Yauregi, I'm excited about her. Like I got to meet her and she was dope and everything. She's cool. Good fighter, obviously. Who else is on here? This one's kind of buried in the prelims a little bit. I thought this one should be a little higher up, if not on a different card. But Tracy Cortez and Amanda Ribas.
Oh yeah.
That's a good fight. I think that should have been bumped up a little higher, maybe on a pay-per-view prelim at worst. But Tracy Cortez trying to make her move, up the rankings or up the ranks. Darren Elkins, the damage coming back against Jonathan Pierce. This one caught me off guard. I completely forgot Michael Johnson was still in the UFC. Like Michael Johnson, Mark Diakesi.
That's a good fight. I think I mean, everything for Michael always feels like a do or die anymore, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but he brings it when he's in there.
You're right. Clay Guida's still fighting, bro. How the hell is that happening?
Every time it's like he'll win one, lose one, a new 4-fight contract, and I'm like, bro, this man's he's gonna be that guy randomly, like at 60 years old, Clay Guida versus somebody. Let's just go. And it's like, bro, like,
dude, last December, I think, at the Apex, he was gifted a ring by his family. And he let me see it up close, and I was like, dude, that is cool. He's like, right? And I promise you, 2 seconds later, he literally moves me out of the way. He goes, bruh. I'm like, still? You just fought, bro. Did you get that out? He goes, I don't know where it comes from. He's a great guy, honestly. He's a great guy to talk to.
No, love him. Very OG. He is taking Father Time to the championship rounds in their fight. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah. Let's see, moving on. Angela Hill gets how do you say her last name? Emily
Ducote.
Emily Ducote, almost 10-year difference in age, but Angela Hill ain't scared of nobody. And then Nico Price against Philip Rowe as your feature prelim. That's a good fight as well.
Yeah.
All right. The main card.
Some good bangers on that undercard.
Yeah. Like the whole card's worth watching. Like straight up. Eric Anderson against Kyle Dawkins. Jack Ermanson taking on Roman Dolidze. This is a great replacement, by the way. Who's he fighting? He was fighting
he was gonna fight Brunson.
And when Brunson fell out, I'm like, oh shit. And then Roman Dolidze, I'm like, if you're gonna get anybody, that's the guy.
I mean, I think for Jack, like, I think the whole thing with Adesanya and Pereira, I think Jack was the biggest loser in that one. Because I think that I think Adesanya holds on another 3 minutes. This is a title eliminator for Jack.
Sure.
And instead now, he's going to have to wait. Most likely have to take on one more guy. Whitaker and all them are suddenly in the convo again. But to your point, Roman is, not as big, but certainly he's on his way up and he's got the record to show it. I think it's a good one for Jack.
No, yeah, exactly. And Roman's a bad dude. Like I'm excited that he's in there.
I also remember this is the second time Jack got screwed because remember he was going to get Darren Till in London.
Yep.
I don't know, man. That dude just has bad luck getting those big names in front of him.
Him and Ovince St. Preux just can't have fighters stay in front of him. It's wild stuff. I'm a little disappointed that Taito Ivasa is even on his card. Like he should be on a pay-per-view main card. But Taito Ivasa, Sergey Pavlovich, big fight for Sergey. Ty is a dangerous guy to have in front of you because he does not back up at all. We saw him in his last fight where he knocked down Cyril Gahn. And that he knocked him down. I'm telling you, he can knock down Sergey. So we'll see that fight. Mateus Nicolau against Matt Schnell. Getting to hear Matt Schnell talk about like I think his walkout was for his mom and all that. Like that got me emotional, man. I'm like, holy crap, that the weight this guy has on his shoulders is wild. But but Matt Schnell, this fight, a lot of people are telling me doesn't make sense, and I don't understand why they say that. Brian Barberena against Rafael Dos Anjos. What do you think of the fight? Because I was like, cool, I'm good with it because I know RDA is shorter and he's smaller and all that, and everyone thinks he's washed up. He's not. He's still really good, but his days for championships are over. But taking on Brian Barberena is a challenge for him, and because Bam Bam's a bad dude. What do you think of the fight?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Has Brian had a fight since the Robbie Lawler win or the Matt Brown win earlier this year?
I
think he fought Brown right in Columbus.
He fought Brown in Columbus, and then he fought Robbie. So it was Brown in Columbus in March.
He beat Robbie in July.
TKO.
Yes,
so he's got 3 in a row though right now.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, you know what? So I mean, this just kind of speaks more to RDA being RDA. I think that
Yeah.
look, I think that his time, I mean, you got to think he's kind of kicking himself that he couldn't get that Makhachev fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's at that stage of his career where it's like, look, maybe I get it, maybe I don't, but you know what? If I'm going to at least get to go out bringing it against these top guys, I mean, look at that run for Brian Barberena. This is no joke for RDA. And then for Brian, I mean, dude, RDA is still one of the most respected veterans out there. I
Mm-hmm.
think the fact that he goes from big name to big name, lightweight to welterweight so often is like, I mean, what? Like, so I like it. I am disappointed, if anything, because when I looked at the card, I felt like, okay, like, yeah, we've shown some love to Tuivasa, right? People know the girl fights are on there, stuff like that. And then it's like, out of nowhere, it's like, wait, RDA is on this card?
Yeah.
Like, how is it that almost slipped my mind that we're not talking about it?
Right.
And once again, to their credit, the UFC is doing this where if they have a live crowd, they're making sure they stack it, kind of, I think it's made literally with the fans in the arena in mind for a
Right.
reason, and I appreciate it.
100%. If you look at some of the Apex cards we got recently, you're just like, damn. And dude, RDA's. I mean, he's coming off he got knocked out by Faceve in July, but his
Yeah.
his resume is ridiculous. So RDA's like people need to stop disrespecting that man because I heard some people talk some shit. I'm just like, stop. Thai fights this weekend. Yes, sir. Oh Jesus, Tank goes should have broke it up instead of filming. Society. If you think I'm gonna get in the middle of a brawl between Jake Paul's giant guys and Nate Diaz's team, you are out of your mind, Tank. You need to stop juicing. Anyway, this guy, I'm not stopping that fight. I'll watch that shit. Look, professional fighters, let them fight. But if I see a fight outside or something between two people, whatever, and I can stop it, I promise you I will.
Hey, this
Outside
is
of that,
exactly why they made a YouTube app for the iPhone.
exactly. Anyway, TikTok and all that. All right. Main event: Stephen Thompson, Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland with a incredibly short-lived retirement, which obviously wasn't for real. And taking on Stephen Thompson. How do you think this one goes?
Oh man, I mean, it comes down to ironically, how much grappling does Kevin Holland really want to do? I think that if
Right.
he brings some of it out, I think that suddenly have a really fun fight. Just because I think that Kevin is also not afraid to stand and maybe try to, work that mid range against Wonder Boy.
Yeah.
I've heard good stuff. I mean, Wonder Boy, I just read that today. I guess he's bringing out Jack Black to, if not sing, then lip sync his walkout song, which is Wonder Boy by Jack
Yeah.
Black's band, Tenacious D. It's tough seeing a guy who you've known be so consistent suddenly come on tough times and struggle to get that W.
Mm-hmm.
I think that stylistically he has the moves he should need to get over a guy like Kevin Holland, but I don't sleep on Trailblazer. I think that if he brings that grappling, this is a close fight. If you're asking me honestly, what do I think? Like, who walks out of there with this one?
Sure.
I'm gonna go Wonder Boy just because I feel like he's very well prepared working with those guys, with Weidman and them. And man, where are they? South Carolina.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to be ready for the grappling if Kevin Holland presents it. And on the feet, I do still favor him striking against most anybody. So I'm gonna go Thompson for the win.
Gotcha. All right. I like Kevin Holland in this fight. I just I'm a Kevin Holland fan though, and getting to talk to him in Vegas before all that. If you were there for the crazy part, I bailed after media day, but getting to talk to him before that, I was like, you got the feeling that he just wants big fights and everything. He wants something big and everything. Unfortunately, the big fight he got, he didn't really get to train for. So, but I'm glad he's still fighting. I didn't want him to retire because he's playing in the tank left. All right, so that's this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. This Saturday night. 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern time is your main card. Prelims start at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern time. So I definitely want to get your boys together and hang out with. It's a ESPN Plus. Just, you don't have to pay pay-per-view or anything. All right, what else are we gonna touch on before we get out of here? Damn.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my 2-year-old.
I was gonna say that's your son telling you it's time to get off the air.
No, that means mom just said it's bath time and he's tripping now. So, anything else you want to touch on before we go?
No, I think we got it. I just want to commend you, Iron Lungs over here, 5-hour live stream of the PFL Championship.
Appreciate it. Dude, I talked to obviously be on Fourth Wall. If you guys don't know Jay Anderson, you should. He's a great guy. I Cageside Jay on Twitter. But I was talking to Jay about it before. I was like, man, I think I'm gonna do a bike companion / play-by-play, because I had a feeling I was like, not a lot of people are gonna buy this thing. Like, so might as well get on and talk about it. And I had like a solid 60 plus people like on consistently. So that was pretty cool. And then but you always get the one or two guys that gets all pissy. So I'm a very thick-skinned individual. I don't say that lightly. I really am very thick-skinned because it makes me laugh when people talk shit. But I had like one guy go on there going like, he gave me like point by point why I suck, and it made me laugh so hard. He was like, "You take too many breaks, bro," and then it goes, he wrote some shit, and they put edit. Now you're taking breaks in between rounds. And I'm just like, sorry, bro, I had to go take a piss. Like, I don't know what the fuck you want from me. Like, it was pretty funny. So yeah, that made me laugh and everything. But it was a great time, and I appreciate everyone that showed up. It was really dope. I think we got some subscribers out of it, so that was cool. But for the people asking me to do it every weekend, no, can't do it every weekend. But for pay-per-views, I will make the effort. So for 282, I would do my best to do one of those for you guys. I'm not doing it for a fight night because you guys will watch it on ESPN Plus. So do your thing. All right. If nothing else, shout out to everyone who tuned in today. Tank 28, you're the man. Toast, again, happy birthday. Everyone tunes in. We love the hell out of you guys. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment, and we will catch you guys on the next one. For myself, Mr. Gabriel. Oh, yeah, you see the Twitters on there, all right? Those are the handles. That double G on TV for Gabriel, at EL32 for myself. We will catch you guys on the next one. Shout out to everyone of the Cageside Press team. Shout out from everyone in the Cageside Press team. For myself, Gabriel, and the whole team, we love you guys. Have a good night. Catch you guys on the next one.